Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. As always, I'm so deeply grateful you're here. I am acutely aware that there's a lot of spaces and places you could be, so I never take it lightly that you choose to spend a little time here. So I don't know about you, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but I have been watching a lot of Olympics lately, which I've always enjoyed the Olympics. I always get fired up at this time because how can you not be inspired by the capabilities of the human body, right? And people really working so hard to achieve these physical feats. It's a beautiful thing to witness. And it's especially interesting for me this year because my son is 11 years old, and to watch the Olympics through the eyes of a child, to sort of witness his experience, just makes it all that much more special. And something that really came up for us around the Olympics specifically is that my son has been a really avid skateboarder for a long time, and he's really skilled at it. And he injured himself a few months ago, I would say about 4 or 5 months ago. And then he's never skateboarded since, which kind of, broke my mama's heart, but I didn't really say much about it. I did get curious about it, however, and I asked him what it was about. Why wasn't he skateboarding? And I had a feeling it was because he had experienced an injury and it scared him. And he told me it was because, when I was able to go, the skate park was too busy and he didn't like it being busy. And we've had a really hot, smoky summer. So that was part of it as well. But I do believe there was still a piece of fear there. And anyway, all this to say that as he's been watching the Olympics, of course, he asked me to take him to the skate park. And he's really fired up about it and so excited about it again. And that's just been a really wonderful thing to be a part of. So there's lots of things that have inspired me about the Olympics this year, but perhaps nothing has inspired me in the way that Simone Biles' decision to step out of the Olympics has. Why? Why was that such a big moment? Because not only has Simone Biles proven that she is one of the greatest athletes of all time, but her very courageous decision to do what she did, which was to bow out of the Olympics, was, in my opinion, one of the most powerful demonstrations of self-leadership that I have seen. I know a lot of people feel that she let her team down, but I disagree. I think she demonstrated incredible leadership of herself, of her team, and of young girls everywhere. Her decision to protect her physical and mental health at the risk of disappointing a whole lot of people in an environment that has historically promoted winning at any cost, I believe will go down as one of the most memorable skills she ever performed. And I mean, come on, we're talking about Simone Biles here. She has performed ridiculous skills. I mean, how many new Olympic feats have been named after her because she's the only one who can do them? So I don't say that lightly. Leadership is a skill, one that she powerfully demonstrated. And you can't lead yourself or others well if you don't know yourself well. So for her to be able to make that kind of decision says to me, wow, this girl knows herself. And she is confident enough to make this decision based on what she knows about herself. You cannot lead other people if you cannot lead yourself. But man, do people try. We wear our busyness. We wear our exhaustion. We talk about our to-do lists, all as if, right, it's a badge of honor, that our worth is a reflection of our accomplishments. And I see so many burnt out, and I know you do too, so many burnt out and tapped out leaders of families, of organizations, of teams. And what if those leaders extended themselves the grace to step back when they were feeling burnt out, when they were feeling depleted? I think that not only would they be healthier individuals, but by way of protecting their own health, they're also protecting the health of the people that they lead. Because when you are taken care of, you are less reactive, you are a better problem solver, you are a better communicator. There are so many things that nurture the health of those we lead when we are healthy. Now, I work with a lot of women. Every woman I work with is a leader in her own right. So are you. You're a leader. You're leading somebody. There's someone in your life who is following you, watching you, learning from you, being inspired by you. Maybe that's a kid, maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's an entire team, maybe it's an entire institution. We are all leaders. And to become really influential leaders, because that's what I want my legacy to be. I want to have influenced the world in a powerful way. And when I say world, I don't necessarily mean the world at large. I mean my world. The places and spaces that I show up in, I want to leave a powerful impact. And that is leadership. That requires high attention to self-leadership. Now, I know we all have a story or many stories about being the burnt out leader. So maybe it's the mother who just needs a break, right? Maybe it is the business owner who never takes their vacation time, never really gives themselves permission to rest over the weekend. We've all been there. And I've shared this story before, but in my life, there was a point, it was when I had my son. I was running a successful studio and I had just bought out my business partner. And I had all kinds of stories in my head because I was fit, because I was healthy, because I was young, because I could. I didn't need to take a lot of time off when I had a new baby. Now, my birth experience was beautiful, but the aftermath was rough. I did hemorrhage after I gave birth. I had to have a blood transfusion. I was in the hospital for a few days. But do you think any of that changed my storyline about what I needed to do to show up for all these other people? It didn't. And so what I ended up doing is a few weeks after giving birth, I was back at it at 5:00 in the morning. I was training clients. I was pumping breast milk between clients, working all hours of the day, trying to mother in the spaces in between, which was a whole new skill set that required a lot of resources that I was not prepared to give. Not because I didn't want to give them. I wasn't prepared for the amount of resources in terms of time, energy, mental bandwidth that motherhood would require of me. And I hit a brick wall in the biggest way. If there was a cold within a 100-mile radius of me, I would catch it for the next 2 years. I would be sick for a couple weeks. I would get well for a few days, maybe a few weeks at the most, and then I would get sick again. I was reactive with my husband. I knew I was not showing up in the way that I wanted to for my clients. I don't know if they knew that, but I knew that I wasn't showing up in the most powerful way. I was really struggling with motherhood, probably suffering far more than I needed to because I wasn't extending myself the grace of backing off, of asking for help, of giving myself permission to slow down. So today I really want to explore self-leadership. And I just want to say out of the gate, this is in no way the first time I have approached this topic. I talk about self-leadership on almost every podcast, in every course, in every webinar, in every free offer I have ever created, because self-leadership is at the core of the work that I teach, specifically because I believe it is one of the biggest missing conversations in the health and wellness space. Because think about it, self-leadership is not great for the bottom line in terms of profit. You are literally teaching somebody how to have agency over their own decisions and their life. Hopefully to the point where they don't need the product or the teaching or the coaching that you provide. So I offer a service, right? That's what I believe coaching is it is teaching women how to return to self-leadership, specifically in the health and wellness space. We don't teach women how to be self-directed in the health and wellness space. We teach women how to follow instructions. We teach women how to follow protocols and rules and regulations. And, it works to create certain outcomes for a period of time. But therein lies the problem: for a period of time. I don't want to help a woman improve her life for a period of time. I want to empower a woman with the skill set she will need to live a life of improvement. So I'm hugely passionate about this conversation because I believe self-leadership is the one skill that it just trumps all others. It helps you to improve any and all areas of your life in ways that nothing else ever will. So let's talk about what it is specifically. What is self-leadership? It's a lot of things. Number one, it is hyper awareness of who you are. So it is an exercise of going in and getting to know yourself. And I know an awful lot of people who avoid that exercise like the plague, because it's not always comfortable. In fact, I would argue it's often not comfortable to go in and acknowledge that you are living your life in a way that is misaligned with what you actually want for your life. That is not a feel-good exercise. So awareness is not fun, and we avoid it. We cover up, we negotiate our way out of it because we're busy, because the to-do list is so long, because we're proving our worth all the time. But awareness is key. Getting to know yourself, building a relationship with yourself, and think about what relationships require: time, energy, trust, attention. We have to dedicate those things to ourselves in order to get to know ourselves. Self-leadership is also recognizing that you and only you are the authority on your life. You get to decide. You get to change your mind at any point. Again, Simone Biles, come on, changed her mind in the height of the most competitive event in the world. That's self-leadership. You get to change your mind at any time about any aspect of your life. Self-leadership is acknowledging that your life is not isolated to a part. Your life has a wholeness to it, and nobody will ever understand the wholeness of your life in the way that you do. So sure, you might be able to hire mentors and professionals who really specialize in a component of your life. That might be relationships, it might be finances, it might be health. But that person does not understand the way that you tick as a person, the things that light you up, the balancing act that you are playing in your life with all the other things you are managing in your life. So you are the only person who will ever know your life the way that you do. You are the only person who really knows the amount of resources that you are dedicating to any one area of your life. Self-leadership is also, like I mentioned earlier, it's taking the risk of disappointing other people so you can stay in alignment with your truth. And man, that's scary. Because a lot of us are people pleasers. A lot of us want all people to like us all the time. And when they don't, we make that mean things that really hurt. And that's avoidable. It's avoidable because we have the capacity to manage our mindset. We have the capacity to choose what we make things mean. And what I see a lot of people doing is not risking disappointing other people. So they are pursuing trying to make everybody happy all the time. And you know the cost of that? The cost of that is you end up not liking yourself. You end up not even knowing who you are or how you tick or what lights you up. And you start to feel very disoriented and very lost. Self-leadership is really at the core taking radical responsibility for liking who you are, how you move through the world, and why you move through the world in the ways that you do. And, I say that self-leadership trumps all other skills. Like it really is the most powerful skill you could ever develop to change any dimension of your life. That being said, it's kind of an umbrella, meaning there's a tremendous amount of skill sets that fall underneath the umbrella of self-leadership. So let's talk about what some of those are. Number one, self-respect. Self-respect is acknowledging that you are worth the effort. You are worth your own time and attention. That you are worthy just the way you are. You are lovable just the way you are. You don't have to hustle for your worth. You don't have to earn your worth. You are worthy. And when you're able to acknowledge that, it becomes so much easier to lean into the discomfort of the other skill sets that will help you to develop powerful self-leadership. Self-awareness is also one of the skills that falls under self-leadership. Again, if you don't know who you are, if you don't understand yourself, how could you ever possibly lead yourself well? And again, self-awareness is not always comfortable. It's not always feel good because it's radical honesty. It's lifting up the rug to see all the dirt you've been pushing underneath there. It's acknowledging where your behaviors are misaligned with how you really want to be living. It's going in and seeing things for what they are, not with judgment, but with curiosity and with the intention of realigning, of making sure that the way you are behaving is in alignment with who you know yourself to be, who you want to be. And part of that awareness, of course, is you are going to identify gaps. We all have them. There is no human on the planet that is proficient in all skills. So when you go in and you start to really acknowledge the way you're showing up, you are going to see spaces and places that you're not all that skilled in. So maybe you're someone who really struggles to organize yourself. Maybe you're someone who is constantly negotiating yourself out of the promises you make to yourself. Maybe you're someone who isn't very good at managing your mindset. And so you are constantly talking to yourself in a way that prevents you from doing the things you want to be doing for yourself. These are all skill sets. And for a lot of people, the gap in these skill sets is the very reason they're struggling to live authentically and live the way they truly want to be living. And I shouldn't say for some people, it's for all people. All people struggle with these things to some degree. So once we identify gaps, we get to decide where we want to spend time in self-development. We have to be willing to develop ourselves. We have to be willing to step in the arena as a beginner, as someone who isn't very proficient at certain things, and not make that mean that we're broken or not capable or not good enough. That we all have deficiencies, not just nutritionally, but behaviorally. So we just get wildly compassionate and curious about what those deficiencies might be. And we take deep ownership for developing those deficiencies into proficiencies. And then self-management. Self-management is having a deep sense of who you are and where you want to go in life, and then managing your thoughts and emotions and behaviors to ensure that you move in that direction. It also requires managing your time and energy. Because as I always say, we have a lot of limited resources. You only get so much energy, so much time, so much mental bandwidth every day. And if you aren't taking responsibility for where you're spending those things, you can spend them all very quickly and then wonder why you're tapped out. So self-management is a really big part of self-leadership, as is, of course, self-discipline. Self-discipline is born from respecting yourself so much that you are willing to follow through with the promises that you make to yourself. And some people could look at the case of Simone Biles and say, oh, well, where was the self-discipline in that? Well, if we go back to her self-worth and her self-respect and her commitment to her own mental and physical health, it makes perfect sense where the self-discipline came in. What a disciplined decision to make that kind of decision, right? Putting her health and well-being ahead of an Olympic gold medal. She prioritized her mental health over another medal because she knows who she is and she knows what's important to her. One of the exercises that I often ask clients to do, and this is really difficult for people to do, is I always ask them to tell me the top 3 priorities of their life right now. And they'll often say something like family, health, and work. And then here's the really difficult part. I ask them to put those in order of priority. What's the most important thing? What's the least important thing with just those 3? And that's so hard because those all feel important. But it's very clear to me that Simone Biles put her mental and physical health as a higher priority than her gold medal. And I have no doubt in my mind that one of her priorities in life in this moment in time was the Olympics, was her athletic pursuit. It's not to say that wasn't important to her, but was it the most important thing? Clearly not. And how awesome that she knew that so she could make a decision that felt so right to her. And we cannot practice self-discipline, or let me say, I don't think we should practice self-discipline without the very important skill set of self-compassion. So self-compassion means that we are gentle with ourselves when we make hard decisions, that we are gentle with ourselves when we get misaligned or make some mistakes. It, again, is that application of curiosity over judgment. It is the kindness in stepping back rather than always feeling the need to step forward. So just to quickly recap those kind of primary skill sets that I always put under the self-leadership umbrella: self-respect, self-awareness, self-development, self-management, self-discipline, self-compassion. And one of the things I want to say about self-leadership that I think is often misunderstood when we kind of talk about it is it doesn't mean going it alone. So self-leadership in most cases is not a solo mission. Powerful self-leadership means being honest enough with yourself, knowing yourself well enough to be willing to reach out and ask for help and get support. Your life is multifaceted. And like I said earlier, right, there's a wholeness to your life. And while teachers and mentors and coaches can give you some directions in very specific areas of your life to develop skills and to create certain results, you are responsible for taking into consideration how that advice actually fits into the wholeness of your life. So when you reach out for help, you get to decide if the help you are getting really feels like it fits into the wholeness of your life. And the God honest truth is a lot of advice that you will get, especially in the health arena, may not make any sense to the rest of your life. It doesn't matter how well it worked for your sister or your coworker or your best friend. Does it work for you? And, most of us understand the importance of raising kids who think for themselves, right? To become critical thinkers. But we're really living at a time when adults don't want to be critical thinkers, especially when it comes to improving their health. They want to be told what to do by somebody else because they are harboring this belief system that somebody else knows their body and their life better than they do. But I'm here to tell you that that person does not exist. The problem with outsourcing those kinds of decisions is that no one else is living your life. And so no one else really knows how that specific advice is going to fit into your life, except you, which is self-leadership. The most important work you will ever do. It is a journey of getting to know yourself and direct yourself. Nothing else will fulfill you in the way that being the director of your own life will. And being the director doesn't mean you don't care, right? Like just I'll do anything I want all the time, right? I'm going to eat any of the foods I want just because, or I'm just going to not go to work just because. That's not what I'm saying. And hopefully that's not what you're hearing. It's liking your reasons for doing the things that you do based on what you know about yourself. Self-leadership is having a developed sense of who you are, really knowing who you are, what you can do, and where you want to go in your life. And then managing yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors on the way to getting there. So getting to know yourself, self-leadership always requires time, energy, and the desire to experiment with what makes you tick. And, I use this word a lot in my own coaching, experiment, which clients don't always like because they think, I don't want to experiment, Courtney. I just want to do the thing that's just going to work. But everything is an experiment because what works for one person, it may work for the other person to elicit the same response, but it may not feel as good to the other person because of what it costs them in other areas of their life. So I always say that everything is an invitation to experiment because you will not know what works for you if you're not willing to try some things on and put it through the filter of not just the outcome you're seeking, like weight loss, but how does this behavior actually fit into the grander picture of your life? So one of the best pieces of advice I have for anyone who wants to improve their health is to develop your self-leadership skills. So you don't have to spend the rest of your life looking outside of yourself for the answers. And this is, of course, again, like I've said a few times on the podcast already today, the meat of the work that I do. It's not the sexy sales pitch, but it is, in my opinion, the most powerful work that I could help a woman to lean into in terms of any kind of change. But of course, I specifically focus on change in the health arena. So if you are someone who needs help developing those self-leadership skills, check out my membership site, Rumble and Rise. You can go to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble and find out all the details. But these are the things I've talked about on this podcast today are the very things that we work on in that space. So I'd love to see you there. All right, my friends, that's all I have to say today. I hope it lights something up in you. I hope it helps you to maybe consider or reconsider the pathway that you are using to improve your own health. And I will see you again very soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.